depends what black people you support if you say Black Lives Matter, because I've seen a lot of people say Black Lives Matter, but I realize something. They don't want equality, they want power. And obviously that's not what we stand for. At All Black Lives UK, we stand for the lives of every single black person. It doesn't matter if you're disabled, Muslim, trans, non-binary, queer, a woman, a man, whatever you do, we are here for you. And I think one thing that we all need to understand is that trans black women are one of the people who face the most discrimination and hate on a daily basis. And for some reason, they are so ignored, and it really hurts my soul. Like, a lot of trans black women have died from George Floyd's death to now. And it's not been spoken about. And that's something that we really need to speak about. When we speak about that, we also need to speak about black women, because I'm a black woman myself, and the amount of hate that I've received for being a black woman who is, quote unquote, the forefront of a movement, it really hurts to see so many black men putting me down for being a black woman and saying what I feel. And I feel like I already get hate from the white community for being a black woman, and when it's a black man hating on me, it's like, why are you hating on me? You can't say that you're black, you support Black lives if you're hating on a black woman standing for your rights. It really baffles me. Another thing that we also need to speak... Oh, thank you. I'm sorry that I didn't write a speech down. I never write speeches, I just kind of speak. Another thing we need to speak about is mental health in the black community and the amount of trauma, that generational trauma, especially that we received from our parents, from our grandparents, our great-grandparents. I think that mental health needs to be taken more seriously, because personally, I'm very lucky to have a black family that has supported me, but I see a lot of my black friends, kind of, the family doesn't support them in that sense. And I think that when we speak about mental health, we really need to take that seriously, because every single day, black people suffer from trauma. Walking on the street, people are staring at you, getting called the N-word in your face online, getting microaggression from people in your school. It really hurts me to see black people not taking care of their mental health. So right now, I kind of want everyone to kind of sit down, be relaxed, breathe in once, and out, in and out, and make yourself settled. Because I think that, yes, these past 3 months have been insane, but we have been processing for 3 months, and a lot of us are desensitized to a lot of things that happen. Personally, I was desensitized by Jacob Blake's shooting. I didn't really process a lot until 2-3 days later, where it all kind of really got into my head. And I think that we need to take care of our mental health, especially through this time, because it hurts to seeing on the news, and you're seeing a black man who could be your brother, your dad, your uncle, anything, and seeing him get shot execution style, and it's on the news. It's stuff like that that traumatizes black people every day. I still have not been able to watch that George Floyd video in full, and I've been one of the people in this country speak about it the most, and I still cannot watch that video in full, because that is traumatic. It is traumatic. When we think about black death, it feels like, especially in the US, it is advertised more, because when we see a white person die, they're not going to put the video on the news. But for example, when Jacob Blake is dying, when Jacob Blake is getting shot, when the murderer, the 17-year-old white supremacist in Wisconsin was killing people, they were putting that on the news. But so they treat us like we're circus clowns. They treat us like they're watching a movie. People don't realize this is reality. It is our reality that we live through every single day. The last thing that I want to speak about is colorism, especially regarding young dark-skinned children. I think that, luckily, as a young dark-skinned girl, I never really listened to the criticism that people kind of gave me about my color, but I know a lot of young dark-skinned girls who constantly think they're ugly because of the color of their skin. One thing that I just want to say for anyone with a young dark skin, anyone, if you know someone, tell them they are beautiful every single day, because they need to hear that. So that's kind of all I had to say. So thank you. Oh yes, I will introduce the next folks. Justice for Black Lives, my friends. Give a round of applause for Blue and Abba.
Thank you. Thank you, Ima. Okay. My name's Baby Blue, and this is my colleague Abba, and we've been doing some of the protests that have been happening over the past few months. What I want to address is kind of touching on what other speakers have said today, but also kind of bringing in the sad news that we heard yesterday about Chadwick Boseman and the tragic loss of Black Panther. And the reason why his death and his passing was so tragic is because that film and that story represented such a great hope for the Black community. It represented greatness, it represented flourishment, and his death, especially in this time, in a time that when we're tired, in a time when we're wavering, it is very, very sad. But what I want us to kind of acknowledge is that we can cultivate that same unity, that same strength, that same flourishment in our own lives. And that's the only way that we are going to fight this revolution. And some of the ways that we can do that is addressing a lot of the places where we need healing in our community. We touched on colorism. And one thing I want to bring to light in colorism is the presence of interracial relationships in our community. Black men are from the Caribbean are the group that has the highest rate of interracial dating. And as someone who is a mixed race Black woman and is the product of an interracial relationship, I just want to highlight the damage that can be done when Black people choose to have children with people they haven't checked for anti-racism. Because I face racism from my white family members. If you do not do the work to gauge and judge that whether that person who's going to raise your Black child has their interests at heart, then don't have a kid with them, because it causes a lot of violence in our community. And that reproduces colorism, because when that child may be raised then by a white person with a white experience, they don't have any framework to understand their experience as a Black person. And then because they feel like a minority, because they can exert that power that they get from colorism, from seeing that they're lighter skinned and maybe seen as better, as more beautiful, as more palatable, and enact that violence on darker skinned people. I've done it myself, because mixed race people, we get confused about our identity, and so we enact that violence, maybe not consciously, but because we want to feel like we have a place in the Black community. One of the first ways that I was able to see myself in the Black community was being described as a lightie, and I clung on to it. It was my power. I'm a lightie. I didn't realize at the time that I was enacting, by using those words, by using that language, enacting a lot of violence onto my darker skinned brothers and sisters. But that is the violence of interracial relationships when you don't check each other for racism. So that's colorism. Another issue that I think we really need to focus on in our community is the Black community's relationship with homosexuality and transgender people. And the reality is, like Ima said, you cannot be pro-Black unless you include all Black people in that. We will not win this fight if we allow the division that has been ingrained in our community from white supremacy to permeate us and poison us. We must look beyond our prejudices, unpack our prejudices, unlearn our prejudices in order to be more united. And so another thing, because I'm not a trans person, I'm not a trans person, I don't want to give that experience and center myself, but what I can talk to is the fact that I'm a woman. And even at these protests, I've been sexualized, I've not been taken seriously, and undermined. And that's on Black men who might be here. So what I encourage Black men to do is that if you, like John Boyega said, want to protect Black women, think about in your life the times in which you undermined, disrespected, assaulted, insulted Black women. Think about it, really come to terms with that. Because you can't move forward using the shallow statement of protect Black women if you're not willing to interrogate how you have harmed Black women. And that work must be done if we're going to move forward. And so I'm going to share some resources for Black men. Please engage your minds with Black feminism, bell hooks, is an amazing author who talks about black feminism and our relationships with love, and how black women are always straining ourselves to look after the black men in our lives without any support given back. So please interrogate your relationships with black women. Ask us questions. You know, really unlearn the ways in which we enact white supremacy in our families. And just another comment on unity. Black people in general, we just need to give each other a helping hand. If it is that you're a mum and you see that there's a kid from next door who's always late to school, offer that mum a help. Offer and say, look, I'll give your kid a lift. Or if your child comes back and says, oh, Jamal didn't have any lunch at school today, pack an extra something in the packed lunchbox, because we really need to look after each other. It's the little things that are really going to make a difference in our community, to cultivate love so that we can move with love. We're not going to move like white supremacists who move with anger, who move with hate. We move with love, and we need to cultivate that in our community in order to survive and thrive. I'm just going to highlight some of the work that Justice for Black Lives is doing. We have created a group of academics and policymakers and organisations that work in these fields to give a set of demands to government. So some of those focus on transforming the education system so that all British kids learn about Africa before enslavement. They learn about enslavement. They learn about abolition, not from the perspective of William Wilberforce, but from the Haitian Revolution and Sam Sharpe in Jamaica. We then need to learn about colonialism, post-colonialism, the Black Civil Rights Movement in the UK, in a way that explains and addresses how and why Britain is racist today, why things like the Windrush scandal were able to happen, why the tragedy of Grenfell was able to happen. We need an education system that explains how society is today. Some other demands are focusing on ending medical racism, ending the fact that black and brown people were most disproportionately affected by COVID, ending the fact that black women are 5 times more likely to die after childbirth, ending and creating a mental health system that caters to the black experience. Because I'm sure all of you know, it's quite scary if someone has mental health problems to send them to a system that is broken. We need to demand for a system that caters to the black experience, that caters to the generational trauma that has been inherited from enslavement, and it continues today because of the PTSD that is experienced by racism on an everyday basis. It's been one anecdote I'll give. It's been so traumatic to even have to go and protest and demand for our rights. We've had to hear stories of young black boys who have been left paralyzed by tasers, or young black boys who have lost their lives. You know, these things are very, very traumatic, and we need to create a space of love in our households to discuss these things, but we also need to demand for a system that gives us the support to work through these things. Some other things that we want to focus on is workers' rights. So we had communication with Belly Mujinga's family, and the reason why Belly Mujinga died was because her workplace did not look after her. We need to demand that corporations and workplaces understand the needs of black people, that aren't putting black and brown people on the front line to fight or to be, you know, key workers and things like that, because that's why people have been dying, because they see our lives as expendable. They see our lives as worthless. They see our lives as something they can just toss away and that are less important than their lives. But we need to demand that they see us as equal. We are also calling for a complete abolition of police and prisons. Now hold up, because I know that sounds scary, but this is something that happens in a gradual way, and divestment of police funds and reallocating them into communities is the first step. And the reason why we need to recognise that this is an issue is because 78% of people in prisons are in there for non-violent offences. That means they're not protecting us from anybody, they're protecting the government and state and public and private property. That's the only reason why those people are in there. And we have to recognise that these prisons are a business. The more people who are in those prisons, the more money goes into their pockets. And that's because they're privatised. They have privatised cleaning companies, they have privatized catering companies who all benefit from more people being in those prison cells or people being in those cages. And then on top of that, we have prison labor in this country. We have people in prisons who are earning less than £4 a week just to provide corporations with products and services. Now, if that's not the new enslavement, I don't know what is. And we need to fight against it. Because our ancestors got us free from enslavement, but those white supremacists were clever and created a new one. And this is the revolution that we need to fight.
Yep.
So I just want to give some more resources to people. If you want to know some more stuff about this, I encourage you to look up Abolitionist Futures. If everyone could get their notes page out on their phone. Because knowledge is power. Okay, so the websites that I want you to explore are abolitionistfutures.com. Secondly, some books that you can read is Natives by Akala, Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, and also Bell Hooks, All About Love. So if anybody can look at those resources, also if you want to look at our page, we also have a lot of infographics that people can read and get to terms with, and our Instagram page is justice_for-Black-Lives. And justice_for-Black-Lives. That's FOR Black Lives. And we are really motivated to not make this a moment. And that's why we're not just doing the protest and calling it a day. We're doing outreach programs. So coming in September, we're setting up an outreach program in Croydon to work with a group called that gives them the resources that we need, because we're not all talk. We're not all just about the protests. But we need your support. We need everybody to work every single day to decolonize their mind. What are you doing at the end of each evening to read and unlearn the white supremacy that you learned that day? Everybody needs to make that individual sacrifice to decolonize their mind, because that's part of the revolution.
I just want to quickly add on to something as well. Just quickly, as Blue was talking about with us mobilizing Croydon, every single person here, you're from other local communities. You need to mobilize your local communities. There's many BLM groups in Tottenham, in Harrow, that are all working towards to make sure this is a unity. Please contact them. See what outreach programs they're doing. A lot of working class people feel disenfranchised that we're not supporting them. I don't feel like the political parties are supporting them. We need to be that voice for them. Please remember that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. Thank you.
Whoa, that's big, that's big. Okay, now it's time to bring a bit of entertainment. This young man, he's just making great